closed. You can turn around. It's fall down the stairs. Hi, Shabbat Shalom. Wow, I'm the one preparing for high holidays. If someone's going to be exhausted, I think it's going to be me. I don't know what's going on in your life. Maybe you're exhausted too. That's fair. So because the high holidays are coming up, like literally coming up, and you're going to be in synagogue, hopefully, theoretically, quite a bit, which means you'll be hearing quite a lot of Torah being read. So I thought what might be interesting for all of you, of all ages, to learn a little bit, not just be talked at, though I do love talking at you, to learn a little bit about one particular Torah reading that we are going to read on Rosh Hashanah. On Rosh Hashanah, we read, for first day and for second day, one of the days we read about the Akedah, the Akedat Yitzhak. The Akedah is the binding of Isaac, when Isaac is bound up and supposed to be sacrificed by his father Abraham. Is this familiar? Raise hands. Familiar? Sound familiar? Sort of familiar? The Akedah, Abraham going to sacrifice his kid? Cool, you've heard of it. Oh yeah, I'm sure you've heard of it. So it's a story, it's in the Torah, and there's just a lot of holes in it. There's just a lot of things that are left out. We hear the basics. God says do this thing, and this thing happens. Okay, but you don't hear any of the reasoning. You don't hear any of the thought process. You don't hear about any of the emotions. You just hear the actions. And so I have 75 copies. Someone's very overly ambitious about this particular Shabbat. But maybe our Rabbi, give me a hand here. Oh, don't worry. 75. For the Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah, and there's no bar mitzvah. I'm like, okay. This is more than I expected. So there's that. On the left side of this paper with 2 columns, sorry for everybody at home. No. Email me, I can give you a copy. No one's watching. On the left side, we have the actual Torah text, the 22nd chapter of Genesis. That's just this plain old story. And the stuff that's bolded is the stuff, some of the stuff, that our medieval and ancient rabbis thought was a little eyebrow-raising. And on the right side, I have the bolded text. That's the thing being commented on. The italics is the source. It's either the guy who said it or the text it comes from. And the comment, interpretation. Because my theory is that the story of the Akedah, when God says, sacrifice your kid, you, a Jew who doesn't do human sacrifice, we don't. That idea, I think, was deeply disturbing to our medieval rabbis, to our ancient rabbis. For 2,000 years, our most brilliant Jewish minds have been deeply disturbed by a story in which God would say to, the favorite human on earth, Abraham, sacrifice your kid. I think our rabbis were deeply disturbed, and they had to try to explain it to make it make sense. And this is how they tried to do it. Plus some funny stuff that I just found amusing. On the left side, the 22nd chapter of Genesis begins. Sometime afterward, God put Abraham to the test. Hold up. Sometime afterward. Sometime after what? Well, look at the right side. Chizkuni, it's a great name, my favorite name of all the commentators. It's a weird one. Chizkuni has the same question. Sometime after what? And he says, well, the events, what events? This refers to the banquet arranged on the occasion of Isaac's weaning from being breastfed. Very common in Middle Eastern society, even today. Okay, Satan, sorry, what? Who? Who's in this story now? Okay, now we have Satan, not a big figure in Judaism. Satan accused Abraham of not having offered a single sacrifice to God on that occasion. God replied that he, Abraham, would have been willing to sacrifice even his own son as an offering if asked. Wow. So, what is Chizkuni's reasoning? Because the text says God put Abraham to the test. What is this test, according to Chizkuni? I was a teacher before I was a rabbi. I can wait. They know they've all had me. Yes? If he had faith, maybe it was a test of faith. It's a very common one. I see This is God and Satan having a bet to see, well, is Abraham really dedicated to you? It's similar. I would say not exactly the same as a faith thing, but similar. Is now Chizkuni saying, well, God had a bet with Satan, saying, well, I bet he would sacrifice his own kid to me if I asked him. But a different interpretation, Chizkuni has two possible ideas. So what exactly is going on here? What's the motivation? A different interpretation, Ishmael. Oh, who's back now? Who already got sent away with his mom previously, but now he's back in the story. Ishmael had boasted to Isaac that he had voluntarily undergone circumcision at an age when it was most painful. He was not circumcised at 8 days old. To which Isaac replied that he, Ishmael, had endured pain on only one part of his body, whereas he, Isaac, would be prepared to undergo such pain on his whole body, i.e., he would even give his life for God. So what's the reasoning that Chizkuni is offering for why does the Akedah happen? Yes? Sure, would Abraham go that far to sacrifice his son? That's one. Yeah, is that, you're doing this or no? Okay. I think Chizkuni offers you the second conversation between Ishmael and Isaac. Ishmael, who's not even in the story at this point because he'd been sent away long before. But he's saying that Isaac and Ishmael have this whole conversation in which Isaac even says, I would be fine to die if God wanted me to. You only had to get circumcised, and that's tough for that one part of your body, but I would be willing to have pain on my whole body. Chizkuni is trying to say, our medieval rabbi, brilliant medieval rabbi, trying to say, Isaac would have been glad to do it. Isaac was happy to do it even. He's just trying to make it be okay. He's trying to make the idea of the Akedah be okay. Because our medieval rabbis, brilliant underpinnings of our entire Jewish tradition, are deeply uncomfortable with the story of the Akedah and the idea that someone would sacrifice their child. Back on the left side, early the next morning, Abraham saddled his donkey and took with him 2 of his servants and his son, and they split wood, and they set out for the place that God told him. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place from afar. Then Abraham said to his servants, you stay here with the donkey, the boy and I will go up there, and we will worship, and we will return to you. Any bit of a problem with this? Yes? What's the problem? Yes. It says, we will return to you, but what is he supposed to do up there? So, what do you mean? Why would he tell his servants, we're going to come back? That's the question. Well, I missed a good part. Well, I'll skip back. Sforno says, we will return to you. Why would Abraham say, we'll come back to you? Sforno says, so that they would not be able to interfere with what he was about to do. They knew, which means that our medieval rabbis are saying, yes, it would have been distasteful, the idea of human sacrifice, of child sacrifice. They would have tried to stop him, so he lied to them. He said, we're going to come back. Or he had such faith that he wouldn't actually have to do it, that he knew he'd come back with his son. Sorry, skipping forward, backward, up, where it says, God said, take your son. This is a funny one. When God goes to Abraham and says, Abraham, and Abraham says, here I am. And God says, take your son, your favored one, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the land of Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering. That's weird. It's a weird line. Because the Torah operates at a premium of space. There's only so much space on that scroll. It's very heavy. Parchment's very expensive. Ink is very expensive. Torahs are actually still today very expensive. And whether you believe that the Torah was written by a literal God or that people have been working on the Torah for a couple thousand years, either way, there's nothing in there on accident anymore. So why does the Torah say that God said, take your son, your favored one, whom you love, Isaac? Why not just say, take Isaac? That seems to be a little more efficient, I would think. Well, Rashi believes that we're only hearing half the conversation. Rashi believes that what we're hearing God say here, take your son, your favored one, whom you love, Isaac, we're hearing God's responses in a conversation that God is having with Abraham. In the middle, on the second comment on the right side, Rashi, your son. This is the whole conversation that actually happened according to Rashi. Abraham said to God, well, I have 2 sons. God answered him, your only son, like the only child son. Well, Abraham said, well, this one's an only child of his mother, and this one's an only child of his mother. God said, the one that you love. Abraham replied, I love both of them. Whereupon God said, Isaac. I just think it would be a really funny conversation. This whole back and forth, as if like, it seems to me that Abraham is like purposefully misunderstanding God. Because it's obvious, right? It's obvious. Who are you going to sacrifice to God? Isaac. If God wants you to sacrifice your son, it's going to be Isaac. It's obvious. And I think you see here Rashi putting this conversation together that Abraham, maybe he's stalling God, maybe he's just playing dumb, maybe he just doesn't want it to be true, and so he's just pretending like he doesn't understand. And God's just trying to get more, like, I have, sacrifice your son. Well, I have 2 sons. Well, you're only child. Well, each one's an only child of their mom. I have 2 kids by 2 different moms. Like, oh, the one that you love. Well, I love both my kids, He's really dragging it out. And I think this is also Rashi's way of showing that Abraham wasn't going to disobey God. God forbid. But that maybe Abraham wasn't happy about doing it. Maybe Abraham was happy to do what God wants, but Abraham was not happy at the idea of sacrificing his own son. And that's okay. And that's pretty interesting considering he's a medieval rabbi. At the bottom, Abraham took the wood. We're getting a lot of actions getting ramped up. Abraham took the wood for the burnt offering and put it on his son Isaac. He himself took the firestone and the knife, and the 2 walked off together. Then Isaac said to his father Abraham, "Father!" That doubling, you should always raise your eyebrows, because again, there's no extra words in Torah. And he answered, "Yes, my son." And he said, "Here's the firestone and the wood, but where's the sheep for the burnt offering?" And Abraham said, "It is God who will see to the sheep for this burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them walked on together. Breshit Rabbah, right side bottom. This is 2,000 years ago, rabbis. Their thoughts about this. And the whole Isaac said to his father, Abraham, "Father." Why is it being doubled? Because it's like a big underline according to our rabbis. When something's doubling in the Torah, you have to pay special attention. And here we have a character, not Samuel, but Samael. And if I was in the chapel and they all got mad at me because I said Samael out loud, they were kind of making fun of me. Samael is not Samuel. Samael is sometimes called the accuser. An angel, not the devil. We don't have a devil. But like an angel accuser who just tries to stir up trouble. Isn't bad per se, but isn't always that helpful. Samael, this accuser angel, went to our father Abraham and said, old man, have you lost your mind? You're going to slay a son given to you at the age of 100? Fair question. You waited this long to have this favorite son, and you're going to kill him? Even this I do, replied Abraham. Samael said, and if God sets you an even greater test, can you stand it? That's fair, because if God's asking you to kill your kid today, what is God going to ask of you tomorrow? Even more than this, he replied. Ooh. Samael said, tomorrow, God will say to you, you are guilty of murder. You murdered your son, which would be sort of true. And he replied, still I go. I think here, the ancient rabbis are trying to show that Abraham was aware of what he was doing. He knew what he was doing, and he knew it was going to feel bad, and he knew that it was going to be tough, and he knew he was not going to want to do it. He didn't want to do it, but he was still going to do it anyway, and they had to have Abraham say that to make this a palatable story. But it goes on, the ancient rabbis. Seeing that he could achieve nothing with him, Samael approached Isaac, and said, son of an unhappy mother, he is going to slay you. Just so you know, it's not going to be a sheep who's going to appear. He's going to kill you. Still I go. Oh. Samael said, if so, all those fine tunics which your mother made be a legacy for Ishmael, the hated of her house, and you don't care. Think about your mother, you don't write, you don't call. Samael goes to Isaac and has this whole conversation where Isaac is still perfectly happy to be sacrificed. Again, the rabbis really need both Abraham and Isaac to be okay with the Akedah story, because they look at the story on its own, they go, this story is disturbing. This story is really hard to take. That God would say, sacrifice your kid for me. Kill him for me. Because we're Jews, we don't practice human sacrifice, we don't sacrifice our children, that's other cultures, that's other religions, we don't do that in ancient times. And it's okay to be disturbed by a story like this and the rabbis are trying to make it be acceptable, and they're trying to make their peace with it, they're trying to be okay with it, because they recognize 2,000 years ago even that this is a tough story to take. They're not going to throw it away because it's tough to take. We don't throw things out just because they're hard to understand or hard to deal with, but we try to understand them in a way that makes them relevant for us, and that's what they're trying to do, even 2,000 years ago. I'm not going to bother with the back of this because I feel like y'all just want to hear Musaf and go eat tuna, which is fine, but there's some more fun stuff on the back. And leave you with the fact that you've now got some fun interpretations of the Akedah story, which we'll be reading in Shul in hours, really, hour countdown. In my mind, I have an hour-long countdown. And if you're with folks who find the story of the Akedah, the sacrifice of Isaac, the binding of Isaac, they find it a little bit hard to take. You can remind them that we have been rolling this story over in our minds and interpreting and reinterpreting and creating whole conversations with Satan and other people for a long, long time. And it's okay to have stuff in Judaism that is hard to understand as long as you're always trying to understand it. And now you have some more ways to understand the story of the Akedah. You can keep these, you can give them back to me. They don't have God's name on them, so you can trash them. Just don't let me see you, because I'll be so sad. And Shabbat Shalom, and an early Shana Tova.
Yashar